I've used a lot of different ways to mount a microphone on my desk, but sometimes the simplest setup ends up being the one you actually want to keep using. And that's exactly what happened with the FiFine BS2. My biggest test was simple. Can it comfortably handle my FiFine Tank 1, keep it stable, and still let me easily move the whole microphone around my desk? It passed that test so well that the BS2 has now become my favorite desktop microphone stand. Before I get into why, FiFine did send me the BS2 to test and give my thoughts on, but they had no input into this video. They did not get to preview or approve anything before I published it, and all of the opinions here are mine. And honestly, the Tank 1 is where this stand really won me over. I've talked about the Tank 1 before. It has become one of my favorite FiFine microphones, and I wanted a desktop stand that actually feels appropriate underneath it. I don't want something flimsy. I don't want something I'm constantly tightening. And I definitely don't want to feel like I'm one accidental bump away from knocking the microphone over. The BS2 is a really good match for the Tank 1. The base has enough weight that once the microphone is mounted, the whole thing feels planted. But at the same time, I can still grab the entire setup and move it wherever I need it. If I want the microphone right in front of me, I can put it there. If I need access to my keyboard or I just want more room on the desk, I can move it off to the side. There's no clamp attached to my desk and no boom arm that I have to swing around every time I want to change positions. For the way I use microphones at my desk, that simplicity is a huge advantage. And with the Tank 1 specifically, I think this is pretty much a perfect pairing. One of the biggest improvements over the BS1 is the redesigned base. And I want to be clear here, because I still really like the BS1. The BS1 is a very good desktop microphone stand. It's simple, it's solid, it doesn't take up a ton of space, and if you already own one, there is absolutely no reason to suddenly think you've got a bad stand. You don't. But the BS2 takes that same basic idea and makes it feel more substantial. The sloped base and anti-slip bottom give it a more planted feeling on the desk, especially when you're using a heavier microphone. If I'm adjusting the microphone, touching the stand, or I accidentally bump the desk, I don't immediately feel like the whole setup wants to move with me. That's one of those improvements that doesn't sound very exciting when you're reading a product description, but once you actually use it every day, you appreciate it. The additional height adjustment is another improvement that I noticed pretty quickly. This matters more than you might think. With some shorter desktop stands, you end up leaning toward the microphone instead of bringing the microphone to you. That gets old pretty fast, especially if you're recording a podcast or talking for an extended period of time. With the BS2, I can bring the Tank 1 up closer to where my mouth naturally is, set it where I want it, and just talk. And with a dynamic microphone like the Tank 1, where you're usually going to want to stay relatively close to the microphone anyway, having that extra height makes the setup more comfortable. Another thing I really like about the BS2 is that FiFine didn't overcomplicate it. There aren't springs everywhere. There aren't a bunch of joints. I'm not tightening 5 or 6 different knobs. I'm not trying to find a good place on my desk to attach a clamp. I put the microphone on it, adjust the height, put it where I want it, and I'm done. Sometimes we make our desk setups way more complicated than they need to be, and I think there is something to be said for a microphone stand that just does its job. There is one part of the BS2 that I would describe as just okay rather than great. The height adjustment gets the job done, but it is still a pretty basic adjustment system. It works. I haven't had a problem with it. But compared with how substantial the base feels, I wouldn't mind seeing the adjustment mechanism feel a little more refined on the next version. Maybe something that's a little quicker to change or gives you a more premium feeling when you're moving the stand up and down. That's not enough to change my opinion of the BS2, but if I'm looking for something to criticize, that's probably where I would start. Because overall, this has become my favorite desktop microphone stand, and I keep coming back to that Tank 1 test. Can it comfortably hold the Tank 1? Absolutely. Does it keep it stable? Yes. Can I easily reposition the entire microphone around my desk without dealing with a boom arm or a clamp? Yes. And does the combination actually feel like the Tank One belongs on this stand? For me, absolutely. That's probably the biggest compliment I can give the BS2. I'm not thinking about the stand anymore. The Tank One goes on it. It stays where I put it. I can move it when I need to, and I get on with whatever I'm recording. The BS1 hasn't suddenly become a bad stand. I still think it's a great option, but the BS2 improves enough of the right things that it has replaced the BS1 as my favorite. Right now, this is the desktop microphone stand that's staying on my desk. Thanks for watching, and if you liked the video, hitting that like button and subscribing really does mean a lot and helps the channel grow. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you on the next one.